Today, friends, we are very, very blessed because our guest speaker said yes, to share his life to us. And he's going to tell us his story. And, before the meeting began, I asked him how old he was. And he said, he's 71. And so, but when you look at him, he looks so young. And then he was speaking to us with such kindness and humility. I'd like to just introduce him a little bit. His name is Mr. Roberto Alingog, and he was a small entrepreneur in Kawayan, Isabela. And he was only 25 years old when he started his very small business. But through the decades, Mr. Alingog changed the lives of thousands of small farmers all over the Cagayan Valley and many parts of Luzon, equipping them with hand tractors and farm machinery when they had none. Today, that small enterprise has expanded to a network of rural banks, 37 agricultural equipment outlets, 144 motorcycle branches nationwide. Robert's family-owned business, which still lives by a strong culture and philosophy, its founder has 3,000 plus employees. Today, we will all have the privilege of listening to Mr. Alingog. They call him RPA, or we can call him Bob, and learn from the rich experience of his storied 47 years of growing his group of companies. My dear friends, please welcome Bob Alingog. Bob, you're muted yet.
Thank you, Brother Bob. And thanks to the Truly Rich Club for inviting me over to speak and share my life experiences. I feel honored and I'm very happy to do it. Okay? I may not have met any of you personally, except maybe Rex, but I look forward to meeting you. I know that you are successful and good people. So I'm looking to the day when the pandemic will not prevent us from meeting personally. Anyway, I was asked to speak before you today with understanding that I will talk about my life experiences in the hope that I may be able to inspire some young people to take the same path or at least go into business because as I understand, the Truly Rich Club is trying to entice the young to go into business because as Dean Pax said earlier, it hits two birds with one stone, meaning it creates employment for the entrepreneur and employment also for the employees, jobs that the business generates. Anyway, I think I'll break down my presentation or my speech into three parts. One, why did I decide to become an entrepreneur? Second, why how was I able to accumulate or put up the initial capital? That's always a very daunting part of the path towards entrepreneurship. So I'll discuss that more more in detail because that is the initiation part of the effort. And if you don't hurdle that well, then the dream stops there. And then after that, I'll discuss my main struggles and then what are the defining moments that motivated me to work harder. And finally, how did each company become successful in their respective industries? So first, why did I decide to become an entrepreneur? When there are no entrepreneurs in my family. My parents were both school teachers, and so when my mother wanted me to be a doctor, my father wanted me to be a lawyer, But when I was in the College of Business, my perspective of a career changed. Uh, I decided that I should become or I would like to become a successful executive managing a large enterprise, because that is what you study in the UP College of Business. But three of my professors changed my mindset. Okay, one said that even if you succeed in your professions, well, I'm not trying to 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 denigrate or put down the aspirations of professional managers, but the teacher said you cannot have that inherited by your children. If you're successful doctors, most likely your patients will not go to your children, because by that time they will be very old when you turn over the business to him. If you're an accountant, the same, or if you're a lawyer, the same. So he said it's better that you go into business and you can, let them inherit. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do now. Now, with regards with the other two uh, professors, one said, he comes to office in a sports car and he's nattily dressed. So that's not the profile we know or expect of a professor from his professor salary. Well, he was quite uh, open with it. He says, you don't expect a professor's salary to be able to buy these things. He said he owns a t-shirt factory, and that is what finances all his luho. So, and directly he said, you can also become a professor and do business at the same time. And then another teacher said, well, I forgot what the other teacher said. There are three of them, but anyway, I wrote it down. But it's enough that two of them said that you should go into business because it's the better path to do. Okay. Anyway, so well, I kept that in mind, but I was not yet convinced until I started working and I was trying to feel my way through. And then I discovered I did not have the gift for being able to handle office politics. I did not have the knack for the social dynamics of informal groupings in the workplace. And I found out also I say the wrong things, maybe the right things at the wrong time. And that alienated a lot of people, both of my colleagues and my superiors as well. Anyway, I kept that to myself. Finally, I wanted to change job. I applied with an investment banking company. They only accepted the graduates from UP, Teneo, and Rizal. 120 took the exams for 10 positions. Okay. Finally, they called only 15, the top 15. I was luckily part of it. And then only 8 showed up. All the other 7 had already gotten their jobs elsewhere. So I was quite confident I would get the job. Well, the interview went well. I think I did splendidly. But finally, they didn't call me back, which they said they would. They would. Now, I realized that one of my friends, who's good looking, mestizo type, got the job, while three other classmates who were from the also were not also called. So I said, if my innate talents or my intellectual capabilities are not enough, because you also need form and substance, then maybe I will not be cut out for a key executive jobs or a key executive position in a large company setting. So that made me rethink my position, my aspirations. And finally, when I finished my MBA, I was taking up MBA at UP also in the evening. My father wrote me a letter. He never wrote me a letter. All my stay, 7 years of my stay in Manila, he never wrote me a letter. Then suddenly he wrote me a letter. Then after another week, he wrote me another letter urging me to investigate a company that newly set up shop in Manila selling agricultural equipment, hand tractors, which was a novelty at the time. Okay, because at the time, all over the Philippines, uh, this is circa 1975. Okay, all over the Philippines, people would plow their fields with the traditional carabao and plow. Okay,
Mm.
it was back-breaking work, difficult to you go under the sun, and the only thing you see is the carabao's butt. They anyway, so it was a novelty. But you know, you're going to sell a hand tractor to a guy, to a small farmer at the foothills of Sierra Madre, and the price is at today's current prices, the price of an SUV, 1.7, 1.8 million.
Wow.
A farmer who only has 4 hectares. No amount of computation would
Yes.
be able to pay that. But you know, I had well, the margin was so compelling that I decided to go into it. So to this newly set up company I went. I'm 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 trying to over explain this because this is how you breed entrepreneurs. Okay, so I went to investigate this company and I talked to the Japanese manager, and they were happy to have a dealer in Isabela because they had just set up shop there. So I signed the dealership contract. Now I have a business, but I have no capital. That's the problem. Okay. So I went back to my employer. I have not resigned yet. I said, I'm resigning. I'm putting up this business. Can I borrow 5,000? That's the usual amount we lend. It was a small financing company. And they said, yes, but if you resign, you will not have a job. And the requirement of the loan is that you have a job. Naloko na. So where will I get they said, where will you get the money to pay? Okay, so anyway, nothing would deter me from that dream. So just the same, I found a way. I went back to my hometown, looked around, and as luck would have it, my old high school alma mater was setting up its College of Business Administration department, okay, Business Administration department. So they were setting it up and they needed a dean. And the requirement of a dean is that he must at least have an MBA. And of course, I just had it. So the president of the college was just too happy to have me. Okay. So after we signed the contract, I went back to my old employer and said, here, I now have a so they gave me that loan, but you know, 5,000 will not go a long way. The cost of the machine, the selling price is about 30,000. The cost will be about 20. So if you have 5, you cannot buy the machine because they're not going to give you credit because you're new and youngish looking. Okay. So I asked 2 of my classmates, one from the undergrad, a friend, to borrow the same way I did. So I was upfront to him, my employer. I said, this is my friend, he's gainfully employed, he's going to give me the process. And they approved the loan. Then likewise, another classmate from MBA, another friend, did that for me. So I accumulated 15,000, but I cannot find any other friend who was willing to, at that time, 5,000 pesos is the equivalent of a half year's take-home pay. Okay, because I was only receiving 800 pesos in the new job as dean of the College of Business matter of my high school alma mater. 1,000 pesos. Still, net take-home pay would be about 10,000. That's half a year's salary. And if he's not really a good friend that's willing to take risks for you, he's not going to borrow 5,000 pesos for you. Anyway, I was able to get the money. I went back to Japanese. I need a unit because all these brochures that you gave me could not convince the buyers because you know you're selling to them a very expensive equipment and all they see is uh, brochures, okay, thumbtacks on the walls of my father's uh, apartment, okay, commercial apartment. So anyway, but I don't know you. He says, I don't know you. Yeah, but so after maybe 6 hours of trying to convince him, he relented. Okay, he gave it to me at 50% down. The net would be, but he only gave me the smallest among the models, which was costing about 15,000. So it was 7,005. So I got the unit, brought it there, and bingo, within a week, we had a client. Wow. The margin is 10,000 pesos because he bought the big unit. Okay. And 35%. So of 30,000, that's about 10,000, 10,005. So 10,000 pesos was a year's salary almost in my old job. So that was good. The problem is it bred another problem because the unit that I got is the smaller unit and now he's buying the big unit. So off to the Japanese I went and asked him, okay, I have a client. I'm going to buy this unit. But he said, we don't know you again. We don't know you. You have to pay cash before I give you the unit. I must have concocted 50 different versions of the same proposal, allowing me to get the unit so I can show it to the bank so that I get paid and I pay him. But the trust factor is not there. He said, I don't know you. So I was there on Monday, and each time he is free, he does not have a visitor, I go in and talk to him about World War I, World War II, the present situation, what another war there might be, and philosophies, dark ages, because I was talking to him maybe 3-4 hours a day. Okay,
Oh
Monday,
my gosh.
Thursday, Friday. By Friday afternoon, 4 p.m., he relented because he did not like the prospect of on Monday, I'll be there again. That will ruin his weekend. So he relented. He said,
Ah.
okay, okay. You bring unit. Okay. Use my truck. My secretary go with you. Mechanic go with you. Salesman go with you. No unload unit if no pay balance. Full. I said yes. Okay. Uh, the rural bank that finances it was anyway fast in releasing the payment. They just have to see the unit, stencil it, and release the payment. So after you break the first sale, everything should be easy. So my dream was to sell 1 unit a month. You know, if you sell one unit, I said, if I sell 1 unit a month, I would have earned my whole year salary. So the ambition was to sell 1 unit a month. First month, I sold 3 units. Second month, I sold 3 units.
Wow.
Third month, I sold 4 units. So what did I do? I set up my own rural bank. Instead of going to the rural banks to have it financed, I set up my own rural bank. Okay.
Wow.
So here I am, entrepreneur at age 25, dean at age 25, and now aspiring to be a rural banker at age 25. Anyway, that's the building, if you can see it. That's the building of my first rural bank, the Rural Bank of Nagilian. I'm the one standing there in front. Okay.
Bob, I like your white pants.
Well, that's the fashion then. Okay, it's bell bottoms,
Bell
and
bottom, bell bottom.
I look quite tall there because I was wearing clog shoes. Okay, clog boots in 1970.
15 inches at the hem.
Anyway, so I had enough money to put a rural bank, but I was young. Okay, the only open rural bank was in a town called Nagilian. You saw the picture. That's 15 kilometers away from my hometown. I've not been there my whole life. Okay, so I went around looking for somebody who can, show me the place, and somebody who can allow me to meet people to convince them to be stockholders of my bank. So it so happened, my brother-in-law knows some people there. So we went. So we were able to get enough stockholders, but 100,000 was a lot of money at the time. Even if their share would be 5,000, that was still a lot of money, especially in a small town like Nagilian. So I made the promise that just sign, I will put up all the money. Now, after it is approved, if you still want to put in the money, okay, I'll allow you. Just reimburse me. So we were able to come up with the required number of stockholders and directors. And typing at that time was, manual, very difficult. You commit one, you miss one letter, you have to retype the whole thing. No correct. Okay. And so it took 1 week just to type the articles of incorporation and bylaws, which is pretty much off the shelf. Then, when I brought it to these people to sign, they all declined. They said the mayor of the town called for them, told them to join him because they're also putting up their own rural bank. Anyway, I was not deterred. If you're young, you don't get deterred easily. So maybe that's one requirement for being an entrepreneur. You should not get discouraged easily. So we went back, looked for another set, type it for 1 week. And then when we came back, the same thing happened. That other set was again called by the mayor. So we tried it another time. Okay. Finally, we got the people whom the mayor would not call because they belong to the opposite political groups, the opposing political groups in the politics of the town. So these people did not anymore go to him or were they called. So finally, I was able to file, and of course, having an MBA helped that we could put up a better prepared because I think it required a financial project, a project proposal, and a project study. So if you went to MBA, that's a plus. That's something you learned there. So our application was chosen over his. So finally, in May of 1977, the Rural Bank of Nagilian was opened. Okay. And that was the beginning of the first bank. And Rex earlier mentioned that he was there when we were negotiating for the sale of this bank. On top of PR Bank, the group also owns Farmers Savings Bank, Emerald Rural Bank, Agribusiness Rural Bank, Banco Alabang, and Banco San Jacinto, and Rural Bank of Mandela. So we still own 1 savings bank and 5 rural banks. Anyway, we sold the Rural Bank of Nagilian, by then Philippine Resources Savings Bank, for in the mid 10 figures. Okay.
Woo!
105,000. So it's not a bad price. Okay? Anyway,
Amazing.
Anyway, so those are the difficulties of I'll backtrack a little. So the aspiring entrepreneurs can take lessons from that. That's the difficulty. You must have a good idea, and even if you have a good idea, you have to be able to raise capital. Okay. So I'm just lucky that I have friends who trust me with half a year's income. If you were, and they were well, one was a family man, the other was not. You're a family man. How can you lose half a year's income paying somebody else's loan just in case he does not pay? The second part on top of the second item on top of putting up capital is, of course, consider the possibility of failure. So if you fail, what happens? Now, it is good if you start early and if you are yet single. Okay, but if you're not single, it's all right, that's the same. But if you're single, you have more confidence that nobody's going to go hungry except you if you fail. Okay, I was single at the time, so I record if I fail, I'll be able to pay off the loans from my salary as dean, and I'll use all of it to pay off the loan. Maybe in 2 years I could pay it off, and I'll meantime eat at my mother's house, stay and eat with at my mother's house, and be fed by her. So then, on the matter of losing time and opportunity, I will lose maybe 2 years. So I was 25. I said, if I lose 2 years trying to pursue this dream, I can still come back and catch up with my classmates. 2 years is not much. Plus, I have an MBA that should help me, cope and be regarded as well as the others. But of course, by that time, I already know that I may not want to go back, considering that I have not yet learned how to be socially adept. Okay, so those are the two lessons that and computations that a budding entrepreneur must factor in to his calculations, so that he can have more confidence in becoming an entrepreneur. So what are the main struggles? Okay, now here's another thing that one should consider. You go where you are most appreciated, meaning you bring in a new idea, or you have talents that are very that will prove superior competition wise in your area of operation. In my case, at the time, this school, my old high school, was looking for a dean, and they have been at it for maybe years, looking for an MBA graduate, and they cannot find one. So I know that, if you have an MBA, you have the formal part of a business education, and that will serve you in good stead if you go into business. Ibig sabihin, confident ka na kaya mo, kasi yung mga iba, many of them did not even have formal schooling. Some are doctors, and they're doing good business in the community. So if you have formal schooling, formal business background, formal business education, rather, then you somehow feel that you can do things better, or can be at least competitive with the other business people. So you go to a place where you are appreciated. So there in Isabela at the time, it was I was I was a rarity and had an advantage. Plus, I was bringing a product that was a novelty, and which I believe will revolutionize how agriculture was going to be done. And really, after when I started, there was nary a hand tractor or a rice thresser that you can see when you go through the barrios, the farming areas of Isabela. After 10 years, you would see them parked in front of houses. They're all over. Okay? Even in the marketplace, they use the hand tractor and hitch a trailer and use it as transport, go to Palenque.
Amazing.
So I must have contributed well to the betterment of farming in my town, because the problem then is, even if there was available land, it could not be tilled because of the back-breaking work required to till just even 1 hectare. Anyway, looking at the business, we must have done so well, and we oversold to the market. Then that creates another kind of problem. Even success creates a problem. So after we have oversold to the well, by that time we have branches all over Cagayan Valley and even Region 1, Region 3. People were not anymore buying agricultural equipment because Filipinos, they like to tinker with it, you know. I found out recently we have there is we carry the Yanmar brand. That's a 57-year-old Yanmar engine in Nueva Ecija. Okay. Anyway, that's another story. So they don't buy. The product life is so long
Long.
that when
Yes.
you have sold to one, they don't buy for maybe 10, 15 years. So now we don't have a market. So we decided to go into motorcycles. And again, we're lucky that line of business is now very big in our portfolio with 147 stores. Anyway, so those are the principles for any budding entrepreneur to consider, that you should go into a place where your talents and your products could be appreciated.
Wow.
Okay, now what are the other principles that I should tell budding entrepreneurs? One is that you should have constant attention and focus on the business, because you as owner, you provide the dynamism and the momentum for the business to keep going on. If you lose focus, or if you don't pay attention, the business the business momentum sort of wanes, and sometimes the business even loses its way. Naiiba yung direction, naiiba yung methods, naiiba yung emphasis. Nagbago na pala yung market, hindi mo pa naramdaman. So those are things that, you should always have constant focus on the business. Okay. So fast forward, what do we have now? Well, Brother Bo summarized it. We have 147 stores in the motorcycle line, 31 stores in the agri-equipment line. All of these are nationwide. So I went to the countryside to start, where my talents are appreciated. Now, I relocated 15 years ago to the city. So from the countryside to the city, from the city to the rest of the country. So with that, we went with our head office in Ortigas Center. We have established operations in all major towns and cities of the country. Anyway, there are some rewards for this effort, and one of them is being recognized by my alma mater as a distinguished alumnus in 2008, and then by the College of Business, by the UP College of Business in 2008, and by the UP Alumni Association in 2011. And as a distinguished alumnus. Also, I founded the UP College of Business Administration Alumni Association. I was surprised it has not been there yet. So in 2012, I put it up along with some classmates. Today, it's a very active one, supporting the college and the university, donating to scholarship funds and to professorial chairs. Personally, I have donated to 2 or 3 professorial chairs. I I donated the refurbishment cost of 1 room in UP UP Bonifacio Global City, along with Nonoy Kimbo, who owns Novelino Wine, who also donated the refurbishment of 1 room, and another one by Manny Villar. Of course, everybody knows Manny Villar. Then I also shared with Nonoy Kimbo to finance the oblation in the UP Bonifacio Global City. So, and one thing I find most gratifying is being invited to speak before the graduating class of the UP College of Business Administration in 2012. So, of course, again, I tried to inspire the young to go into business, because going into business, taking the career path of entrepreneurship, in all honesty, I can say that it is a gratifying and fulfilling one. So with that, I end my speech, and I would be happy to receive any questions on this matter. Thank you.
Woohoo! Yeah. Bob, that's amazing. I love your story, especially how, if there's one thing that came out, like one thing that struck me is that your ability to just be, the person is saying no to you. Let's say let's start with the Japanese guy, the guy who brought the tractors. He kept on saying no to you. And then you would just go there and talk about World War I and World War II, you said, and then the coming war that's coming, and then you'll talk to him for 4 hours, and then the next day you'll come back again, and the next day you'll come back again, and so that's what you said. You said by Friday 4 p.m. he had to say okay because he didn't want to see you again on Monday.
Yeah, the prospect of seeing me again on Monday will ruin his weekend. And the Japanese like their weekends. Okay, they play golf and things like that. I must have made 50 or so proposals of the same thing, but he kept saying no. So I would, entertain him by talking about religion, the different philosophies, etc., etc. Everything I learned in UP, I must have summarized to him. I must have summarized to him, and he liked it. He was an educated Japanese guy, but when I sing it my proposal, he would say, no." So anyway, I think that's the persistence to get what you want is important for any entrepreneur, because you will meet disappointments along the way. That's given.
And then your story about opening your first rural bank, that the mayor wanted to put up another one, and then every person you invited as what do you call that, a stockholder?
Stockholder, yeah.
So every person you invited as a stockholder, he would get, and so you couldn't get, but you just kept on. You did not stop. I think another human being would have said, okay, I give up, this is not for me, give up plan, scratch, think of something else. But you just kept on. So I think that your persistence, Bob, is the reason why you are who you are now. It's so amazing.
Well, maybe yes. And if one really wants something, you must be ready to sacrifice and do what it takes to get it. That
Yeah.
I learned early on. Well, I came from a small town. The educational system was not that good. So when you go to UP, you will you will really be you will really have a difficult time. And you know, persistence in this matter pays off, both in education, in business, and most things in life.
Bob, you know, it's been like from the age of 25 all the way until now. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of challenges, a lot of problems. What would be the toughest challenge that you ever faced in the past, 47 years of your being an entrepreneur? Can you recall?
Yes, in 1989, I was 39 years old. I was into a car accident. Okay, was there is this portion of the highway somewhere in Nueva Ecija where they burned rice hull and hay on the edge of the road, and when the wind blew, it covered the road with smoke.
Oh,
So usually we just drive through it because thinking it would be a very short one. But this time they covered a stretch of over 100 meters. So if you go through it, it's contrary to past experience. When sudden you go through it without being able to see anything, but momentarily only, later on you can see the road. But this time it was different. My driver cannot see the road, so we had to stop. We actually bumped another car. Okay, so
oh,
I knew there would be an accident waiting to happen, a large one. So I tried to get out of the car to flag down or warn oncoming vehicles not to
oh
proceed.
no.
But on the act of alighting, our car itself was hit by a dump truck. So I was thrown out of the car. I suffered multiple fracture ribs, and I had a broken femur. So I was brought to a hospital, and the hospital did not do a good job, and the operation got infected. And for the next 8 years, I was on crutches. I could not walk.
8 years.
8 years.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
after the first operation, because I had fever and everything, I was brought to another hospital in Manila now, because the first hospital was Nueva Ecija. So the best surgeons in the Philippines tried to do it one after the other. So in a period of a year, I had about 8 operations, but they were not able to fix it. So 2 years after that, I went to the US for operation, and there they were able to treated the infection first actually, and then did the metal implant. But again, on the 8th year after that, the rod broke. Okay, so I had to bring it back again to. So my my eldest was 9 years old when the accident happened, and I had a business to run. So I was in crutches all those 8 to 10 years, 8 to 10 years. So thankfully, in 19 in by 19 by 2000, I was out of the crutches. But those were difficult years. Okay, very difficult years, because you cannot even manage to walk properly, and there was pain, low grade pain sometimes. It was painful, really painful, and you would really feel discouraged. Okay, Now, if it's a one-time thing, you drink a few beers over it and then you forget it. But this one, no. Tomorrow it's there again. It's not yet healed. You cannot walk. Okay. So anyway, that was tough. But somehow I always thought that I'll get through it successfully. And everything will be all right. And it did. When I brought Aldous to Australia for enrollment, I was still using a cane. Okay? Was still using a cane because I could not walk properly yet. So that was the most difficult part of my life. It was actually almost a full decade.
That's wild. That is so wild. I can only imagine, like 10 years. That's 8 years, just crazy. Um, Bob, how about this? You started really small, and then now it's like a giant, 147 stores nationwide for the motorcycle, and 37 agricultural
31.
31 agricultural the stores that sell agricultural machinery, and then you've got, of course, the rural banks, some of which you sold already. Okay. Oh, just one. Okay, you sold one for millions. It just struck me how you're so good with people. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. You lead people well, and having a network like that. So that's the first thing. You're great in people. Maybe if you can give us advice on how to lead people, your leadership. How do you make people be excited to go to work every day for you? There's another question I have is, I'm sure you establish incredible systems. But that's another question. I'm going to reserve that for after you answer the question on leading people.
Well, regarding people, when we were smaller, we treat all our people as family, okay? So I see them every day. And even when we had stores all over Cagayan Valley or all over Luzon, we always treated them like family. And we treat them well, okay? Bonuses, salaries. We send people to MBA, AIM. We send people to the children. We have a standing policy that all the children of employees in whatever company under the Rupali Group, if they pass UP under whatever course, they get full board and tuition and books.
Oh my gosh!
Until they finish, provided they don't kick out, they don't get. And many of them have availed of that facility. And of course, the key people, we bring them for travel. Okay, before the pandemic, almost every year for the last 10 years before that, we bring them for travel to celebrate our successes. And of course, we bring them to the best places and the best hotels that money can buy. So even people who have worked with World Bank, who are our directors, who have been expats, when they join the trip, they're really happy because it's not the same as when they were working. Okay, it's even if they take a side trip after they attend conferences abroad, this is not the same because the accommodations were luxurious, the trips were nice, the sites were nice. So we treat them well, and we give, I think, generous perks. Now, one main reason for why we moved to Manila, because when the businesses were growing, there was a dearth of managerial talent. We cannot anymore source enough talent of the quality that can run a larger scale.
Okay.
So we have to buy a building in Ortigas, and well, it's just a five-story building. It's not the high-rise building, but we could have demolished that old building and put up, but we didn't have time. Okay, so anyway, all the offices of the Ropali group of companies are housed there now, and as I said, the main reason to bring them to be able to source managerial talent or executive talent is to be in Manila. Because if you say that your head office is in Isabela, they're not coming, even if you have a nice building there, okay? They're not coming because Isabela. So anyway, also unfairly, okay, my advice to entrepreneurs who would go to the province because mas maluwag, their talents there are more appreciated, their products too will have less competition. When they grow to a certain size, they should relocate head office in Manila. Because even your suppliers will not go to you that often if your head office in Isabela. Here, they come too often. Okay. And even the banks, okay, in the province, even if you're big in the provinces, in their branches, when you talk to the branch managers, you talk of very small amounts.
Okay.
In Manila, you start with very large amounts.
Galing.
So hindi doon pag lumaki na atras na yung branch manager dito. Pinag-uusapan, hindi ka pupuntahan. And yeah, they start with larger amounts.
I have maybe I have two last questions, Bob, if that's okay. I was reading about what you were doing in the companies, and there is a lot of innovation. The way you respond to the situation and to the customer is amazing. For example, walk-in, walk-out system. That I was reading about that, what you were doing, and that was new. You know, people being able to get their credit right away. You know, and the second thing was what's the other one? Home along deliver, home along the river system that you created, whereby people in the different towns can just order their motorcycle on credit, and then you just deliver it. I mean, that was wild. So I just want to ask a question is, like all the entrepreneurs here in this room are asking, I want to be more innovative. I want to be more creative, responsive to the situation, etc. Where do these ideas come from? How do you implement it? I mean, if you can just tell us a little peek into that story.
Okay. First, in a sales transaction, it is the customer that's king. Okay, you should be able to know what he wants and satisfy it so that he buys from you. Now, our motorcycle customers are mostly small entrepreneurs and wage earners. So it is good if you can save him one day. So instead of him coming back and waiting for several days, if you can save him one day, he will appreciate that.
Galing?
Don't anymore allow it to. So we just have to make adjustments in our systems to be able to satisfy that. Okay. The home along deliver, we already had that even before the pandemic, but it's providential that we had it before the pandemic came. Okay, because again, sometimes people do not like to spend time getting a motorcycle. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, buying the motorcycle was really a big thing. Okay, it was an event like a wedding. But these times, the motorcycle has become utilitarian.
Yeah.
Nature. Okay, they just use it to go to office, to their place of work. So if they can have it as quickly as possible, even without going to the store, then we will be a preferred seller. Now,
Mm,
you will have to devise schemes to be able to do that. Some other companies, well, they're not in the motorcycle business. They just uh, interpolate or create algorithms
mm,
of spending behavior, and they would be able to make a decision, to make a credit decision on a certain person, whether or not he can get the loan and at what amount. Now, with us, we are more direct. We do it the traditional way, but we, uh, we make the process more efficient so that we can service the customer faster. So these are both Wiwo and Home Along Deliver after the popular TV show. Well, that was our time. That was my time in the 80s.
Bob,
I don't
Bob,
think
you,
Rodolphe died.
I'm just a bit surprised that you can do a credit check in 5 minutes. Do I understand that right?
Yes, yes.
My gosh.
We have massive databases. Okay,
Oh my gosh.
so we regularly gather all this database, put it in a database system, and come up with the traditional way. Just
Yeah, yeah.
take it out. But the secret is getting the massive data.
You created your own what do you call it? Manual algorithm. But you're right. Other companies, the customer will come in and then you'll say, okay, come back after 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. He goes back. Before he can get his motorcycle, you do it in 5 minutes. So that's incredible. I have a last question to ask, but I'm gonna ask the room if anybody wants to ask any question with Bob. Tata here wrote her question. What's your biggest why, Bob? Why do you do what you do? And did it change ever since?
Yeah. Okay. The biggest why comes from knowing yourself. Okay. So if it is not in accordance with how you know yourself, you ask why. Why will I not do it? Or why will I be doing another thing if this is me?
Wow.
That is,
Wow.
to me, that's the simplest and most essential issue.
Amazing. Amazing. Anyone else who wants to ask questions, you can write it down in the chat, or you can open the microphone. You can open the microphone and just ask the question. What's the future of Ropali?
Well, okay. The ambition, the only unfinished work for me is, seeing to a smooth transition of the running of the businesses to my kids. Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's right.
giving myself until maybe 2025 to do that. After that, maybe I should play more golf, go more, go to more fishing trips, and maybe do more farming.
Ah, that's so nice. Wonderful. Which leads to another question from one of our mentors, Ronnie Siasoyko. What is the succession planning for Ropali, considering you seem to be a very difficult shoe to fill?
Well, the succession the succession planning is pretty much in place. Succession plan is pretty much in place. About 10 years ago, we had our family constitution, and part of the exercise is succession planning. And the group, the Ropali group, has 4 lines of business. So each of the 4 kids have been assigned 1 line. Aldous
Galing.
is in the real estate line. Ada is in the agricultural equipment and machinery line.
Mm,
Ariane is in the motorcycle line.
yes.
Anabi is in the financing and banks. So it's all
Yeah.
assigned already, and they're there. They have stepped onto the plate, so to speak.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, I know Aldous, of course, because we know Leia. Aldous and Leia, how are you? You're here. Thank you so much for making this interview happen.
Hello po. Hi, everyone.
Aldous is the one with a nice beard that no one can copy. Everybody's jealous of him, except Peter Ongson is here with his beard. Another question is from Ditas Lobregat. Is your bank accredited with DA-ACPC?
I don't know what that is. I'm not in the operations part anymore. So what's DADC?
Yeah, Ditas, what is DA-ACPC?
Department of Agri.
Okay. We used to be able to assign some of the loans to agriculture, to other banks, as their compliance for the Agri-Agra law requirement. Okay, but I'm not anymore familiar with the details. I'm not into operations anymore. It's all run by professional managers, and it's Anabi who oversees the operations of the bank. She's not
Amazing.
even there, but she can put her nose there because
Yes.
part as honor, as a part of the honor. But
Santi, oh yeah, go ahead.
So that's the involvement.
Yeah.
With regards to the other company, Adamco, it's accredited as a supplier of agricultural equipment for RCEF, Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. Actually, they participated in many of the bids and won some.
Yes. So that's the answer to Santi's question on agricultural products. Ronnie is also asking about how did you train your children? How did you train the next generation to be able to take on the leadership challenge?
First, they had no choice. They had to take up business courses. Okay, so all of them took up business courses. No singers, no writers, no doctors, no lawyers. Well, just simply all business. Okay, so
okay.
Well, early on, maybe I sold them the idea of why they should go into it. So sell it to them early.
You're a good salesman.
Well, I never
You sold it to your children very well.
Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing. I think this question comes from from Man. Okay. You seem so relaxed, po. It's admirable. Do you get stressed at all? How do you handle these stressful times because now you have already delegated? This is a question from Maan and her father, Ray.
I get stressed when I don't get stressed. When the situation is not stressful, I get stressed. Okay. So it somehow has built into my system already. Day in, day out, many stressful situations come around. So suddenly, if there's nothing to be stressed about, I feel distressed or stressed. But anyway, I still keep a 8 to 8 or sometimes 8 to 9 work day, even
Oh
under.
my gosh.
So, uh, hopefully by 2025, I can do more farming. Okay, raise. I have some farms, raise pomelos or things like that.
Wonderful. Last question from the group, from the room, is Larry's question, which is, what's the role of technology in your business?
Well, when pandemic came, we had a full effort at what we call DMS, okay, digital management systems. So we intend to fully digitize all our processes such that our people only work if they fill up a form. And you only fill up a form through a digital form. Okay, so everything is digitized. So that means if you digitize all these processes, you store all the data and you can configure all the reports easily. So we even have a system for that. It is fixed set report, FSR. So even if you don't like it, the report will pop up in your screen and you have to address it, okay? Because there's a simple analytics there and it even tells you what you have to address, okay? But what you have to address.
Galing.
We're working on it, maybe it's almost done.
Woo! Rex Mendoza has something to share. Rex, can you come and share with us?
Hi, Bob. I was telling the guys, I have a bit of inside info about you being in the capital markets and always studying the personalities behind the business. No, I know you're very humble, so you did not say these things, but I'd want to share this with the team because they're the hallmark, no, part of the hallmark of your success, no, guys. From ever since, no, Bob established that rural bank in Aguilian up to this very day, no, I have not heard any creditor say something bad about Bob. From ever since, his credit is impeccable. You know, that's one very important thing for entrepreneurs. You want to grow, you have to have access to credit. If you want to have access to credit, you have to keep your word. You have to, you know, be there when it needs to get delivered, stay in tune and then in you know, in line with your covenants, no. So anyone who has an extension exposure to Bob always has good words about him. Second is his willingness to learn from others. Nakita nyo very clear. He is a very humble person. In his board are a lot of his contemporaries in business school. Mahar Mangahas is in your board. Jun Sabug, professor of UP and Ateneo, also in your board. These are fraternity brothers of mine. So Bob, you're not a Pansinian, but we always discuss you in circles in Pansinia because you imbibe the cardinal virtues that we have, even if you're not part of the frat. So I really am very proud of that. In fact, guys, he's very humble, but it's public anyway. You can search it. Yung 125,000 capital niya na yon actually was sold for about 6.125 billion. That's 3 times book. I saw the deal. I saw all the particulars there. As I've said, Eugene Acevedo, previously from BNB, he was at UBP at that time. UBP wanted a consumer lines business. They don't want to start from scratch, so they just got Bob's company. Diba? So eventually, Eugene went to RCBC, but all of those relationships, Bob, you take care of it. I haven't seen anyone who has had a deal with you with something negative to talk about you. The third one I'd want to share is your adaptability. So from motorcycles, you know, olden times machinery, now you're back to machinery. I know you're with the government right now, one of the rare entrepreneurs and companies that comply with the qualifications of this modernization program. Guys, just like that, Bob's companies are accredited by government, Department of Agriculture, to be a partner. This is a 5 billion project for modernization of agriculture, mechanization, stuff like that. So Bob is already in the forefront of that. adjusting, the adaptability within the pandemic, Bob. Ginawa mo yan within the pandemic. So that's very important also. And last, I guess the humility of knowing when to, when to trade the gloves and when to hand this down to children. No, I know I was part of that team that made inputs to your family constitution. So whether you've seen me do that or not, I was consulted for that as well. His children are now running the business. And as we all are, we learn from our children being digital immigrants and our children are digital natives. Bob learns from his children. Bob, your motorcycles are now in Lazada because of your kids. I'm so sure that's not from you. so, so he learns from his kids. He's opening up his business. So, and that's the reason why it's formidable. Bob is willing to also learn, get new inputs. And if that's coming from his kids and he's giving them the runway to take the flight on their own. So Bob, all of these things, I'm really happy to share. You're taking Kubota, a very popular brand at this time. Na, Yarman has a very, very good partner in you. So with that, I hope that what I shared is in line and accurate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I just wanted the guys to hear that from me because your humility sometimes hindi mo ipagayabang yan. I'm so sure that's the case here. So I'm all too willing to share that in your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rex, for the very kind words. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. I like that business. You invest 100,000 and then you get 6 billion. Maganda yun, ano? Nice business. Congratulations, really. And tama si Rex, you don't do that just because you want to, but you have the character, the humility, the integrity that people trusted you all through this decade. So we do honor you, Bob.
On that score, okay, going back to, playing it fair with the people you do business with, that Japanese company, after 2 years, could not keep the business afloat. So they were liquidating. They were going back to Japan. And this Japanese manager called me for a conference and he said, you owe us 75,000 pesos from the regular trade account. We're leaving on Friday, and that was, I think, a Tuesday. Can you please pay the account? I know it's not due yet, but we're leaving, and we don't want to come back for it because there are other things to attend to in Japan. So what I could have done is say yes, but do not show up because they're leaving anyway. He told me.
Yeah.
But I believe I owe them my whatever business in machinery at the time. So I had to go around, scrounge for money, and pay them before they left. The other dealers were kidding me. Why did you pay? They're leaving. I said no, it's not fair to do that. Another is in 1983. If you remember the project KKK, they were giving out loans in all over the country. So I made a proposal. They lent me 3 million pesos in 1983. That was a large amount.
Yeah.
So those were difficult times also. So we could hardly pay. Okay, but I went once for structuring and did my best to pay, and was able to pay after not just an extension of maybe 2 years. Remember, those were EDSA. And
yes.
so
Exactly.
difficult times. The economy was not good, and all the other borrowers were kidding me, and even my relatives tell me, what, there is this guy who tells me you have gone crazy. Why? Well, because KKK, the Marcoses has left, KKK is not collecting. Why are you paying? So I said, why not? If you can pay, you pay because it's a
Right.
utang yan eh. So that kept my credit intact. Okay, all those other guys, they kept the money. Well, many of them could not really pay because it was difficult. But the other thing there is that they did not even also try anymore. Okay, and some of them could pay but did not pay. So anyway, all the I was the only one who borrowed more than 1 million. All those who borrowed 1 million and above did not pay except me. So that's
Wow. Wow. Thank you.
So it must have.
Thank you, Bob.
I must have that kind of reputation. If you don't pay, really is remembered for a long time. And
Brother Bo,
Yes.
sabi ni Nonoy Kimbo, he'd like to share Bob's love for our university. Go Maroons! Go Maroons!
Nonoy here? Is Nonoy here?
Yes, I am.
Nandito si Nonoy Kimbo.
Nonoy, hi.
Proud to be UP alumni po, UP Engineering, 79 po ako. Beta Epsilon.
Good morning, Brad Nonoy. Good morning. The Rex here.
Good morning.
Nonoy,
Yeah.
are you here?
Correct.
Sure, sure.
I
You
am.
can.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yep.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, again, I had the good fortune to have been selected by Bob to be his successor sa UP-CBAAA, UP Alumni Association. No? And at the time, I was reluctant, but I saw his passion. I saw what he's done. To this day, believe it or not, UP-CBAA remains a very, very active group. And he passed on the baton to no other than Manny Villar. And believe it or not, we conduct regular meetings, and a lot of these, a lot of us, especially Bob and myself and Manny Villar and a number of other very prominent members of the UP-CBAA. In fact, the dean right now of BA is a UP-CBAA director as well. And we never stop talking about what we can do for UP. I was also privileged that Bob adopted me into class 71, although technically I'm batch 70. And so I'm celebrating another Jubilee year this year. And thank you, Bob, for allowing that adoption. Actually, I was also adopted to batch 69. But I cannot emphasize enough, the passion and the love that Bob has for UP and the things he's done, the things he's donated. He didn't talk much about it, but there's really a lot to talk about how he, returned, a lot of the things that he's learned into UP. And UP has really benefited a lot from Bob's passion for UP. Thank you. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noy. Well, Nonoy himself is a very generous supporter of the UP Business Administration and of UP itself, donating facilities here and there, including that refurbishment of one room that I mentioned earlier, and the oblation statue in front of the BGC, UP BGC, which we both financed, the construction of which we both financed. So aside from that, Nonoy also has given to UP professorial chairs and many other types of funding came from him personally.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Brother Bo,
Yes.
I might have to say this, no? Although syempre, this is Bob's moment, but I hope we can also extend an invitation to one of our fabled fraternity brothers, Nonoy Kimbo. One of the
Yes.
best entrepreneurs this country has also ever produced. No? For the guys who don't know him, this guy is the guy behind Novelino Wines. Okay,
Oh,
so
hey.
he's competing in a market purely Filipino, having all of the stuff done here with all his own research, and it comes as a great package. And now also with his kids and other extra businesses here and there. So I think
Yay.
we should also extend this invitation to him to share
Yes.
his story. Sorry, Noy, medyo
Okay lang.
napasubo ka sa akin, but
Okay lang.
I know a lot of people will have to learn from you. Again, these are the guys, no, Bob, Nonoy, yan ang mga idol talaga.
Rex, I will apologize sa mga DLSU, yung D lumusot sa UP. So baka
Nonoy, we'd love to have you another
Thank
time.
you.
Nonoy.
UP Maroons pala andito.
Yeah.
So but I apologize for DLSU, D lumusot sa UP. For UST, UP sana tayo. So nagkataon po mga UP alumni po. Really very active in loving our university. Mabuhay po kayo.
Yeah, if I may, buti na lang hindi ka AMDU. Ayaw matanggap sa UP.
Nonoy, this is a.
I have a personal
this is
question, Bo.
Yeah, Larry,
Bo.
go ahead.
Yeah, simple personal question, Bob. I love your story and I thank you for inspiring us. My small question is, I noticed you were single when you were wearing your white white pants, no? When did you get married and how did you choose the person that you married? And you were very silent about her, but behind every successful man is a woman. So I want to know, what was your rationale in choosing the person to marry to give you these wonderful kids that you have brainwashed to succeed you?
I will have to answer that under duress. Ano, nandito naka he's right opposite me. But anyway, truthfully, okay. Well, I got married at age 30. It was quite late at the time. All my friends got married at age 25. Yun ang panon eh. Yun ang standard. The girls and even the boys get married at age 25. I got married at age 30. Going back to the question of what made me choose Emmeline. Well, by the way, Emmeline is from Isabela, also from Ilagan. Was the fact that she was pretty. Okay? She is still pretty. Okay. Maganda siya, and it's not that there were no other pretty girls in Isabela, but she had qualities that I admired. The family also comes in as a factor. We basically come from the same family background. Her mother was a division school superintendent, supervisor, and assistant superintendent rather, and her father worked with the Red Cross, so government employees. So from a background, from the background part of our personality, we more or less have the same, and so we understand each other. So the important thing there is we got together easily. We look at things from the same point of view. So even today, it's sometimes eerie that if I think of something, she would tell it to me. Okay, if I hum a tune in my mind, she would also hum it openly. So that kind of connection.
Galing. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we have to just say thank you to Bob. He was such a blessing to us. And let's give him a big, big hand. Thank you, Bob. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much, Brother Bob.
Wonderful.
Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Dean, Ax, to Larry, to Mary, and to Rex for a very nice regard of my person. So I would like to tell you that I hope I can meet all of you personally one day and the better soon. And
Yes.
assure you that I feel honored by this invitation and I'm very glad that I accepted it. So
Woohoo!
very much.
Next time, when we will have a physical gathering already with the Platinum members, we will invite you, Bob. And if your schedule is free, we'd have that as our joy being with you. God bless you more, Bob. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.